Hey, what's going on, BattleBot crew? So if you watch some of my previous videos, you know that I shift my bike with a prosthetic leg. Now, it's not the best, nor is it the worst way to shift a bike, but it's getting the job done right now. But as time has gone on, I have started to miss some shifts just because I don't have total control of this foot when it sits on top of that peg, and sometimes it'll slide off the peg. And the reason for that is the current peg setup that I have on the shift levers are pretty short. They're really cool Deadbeat Customs, like black knurled shift pegs, and I love the way that they look, and I come from the school of thought of performance over aesthetic, and if you can marry those two up together, that's like the ultimate combination. So I started doing some looking around. I found a couple of shift pegs that are almost twice the size in length as the current setup that I have. Now, they're not the prettiest, they're just not my style, but I'm gonna put them on today and ride around for a little bit, and I do believe they're gonna perform better for me. And it's also gonna buy me some time to maybe see what else is out there, or maybe design my own or something like that. But in the meantime, I should be able to ride the bike and not have to worry about missing some shifts here and there. Now, normally when I'm doing maintenance or any kind of work on my bike, I like to lift it up just because it's easier, obviously, to work at like waist level. And I do have a hydraulic lift, but the chopper's on it right now. This is a really quick project. It should only take a couple of minutes. And so it's not worth the time to swap the bikes around. Plus, on top of that, this is kind of like an entry-level project that you can do if you're first getting a motorcycle. It doesn't require too much know-how. It doesn't require any mechanical skills. And so if you just got a motorcycle, I'm gonna assume you don't have a jack or a lift or like a table or anything like that in your shop. For the sake of time for myself, and then for anyone else out there who wants to do something quick on the motorcycle, but they don't quite have the confidence, and so they wanna start on something like quick and easy and simple, you're probably gonna be working on the ground as well. So first, before starting any project, especially if it's automotive, you want to have a clean workspace. I have this little rolling tool cart. I picked it up for cheap from Harbor Freight, and it's great because I can put whatever tools I need on top of it for whatever project I'm currently working on. That way I'm not constantly going back and forth from the project to the toolbox. And then when the project's done, I just offload everything back to my toolbox. So for this job, what you're gonna need is shift pegs, shift levers, if you're changing those out too, Allens, a ratchet if you're using sockets, blue Loctite. I recommend having a service manual specifically for your motorcycle. Now, we're not going to need it for this project just because it's so simple, but it's good to have it around in the shop just in case. And most importantly, fuel. So as far as the size of the Allens, mine are specifically going to require a 3/16 to remove the shift levers, and then the new shift pegs look like they're probably going to have to use a 1/4 inch. So I'll go ahead and pull those out and get those ready to be used. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the shift levers. You can see the heel shift lever is in front of the toe shift lever on the spline. So we'll remove this one first, and then we'll remove the second one. Now the way to do this is there are 2 screws, one on top on the heel shifter and then one on the bottom for my toe shifter. And so I'll back both of these screws out and then I'll slide them right off the spline. Now, a good habit to get into whenever you're pulling things off of the bike is you want to have a place already prepared to put the parts. I have this little tray that my buddy welded together for me. They have magnetic ones, but all of mine are currently being used right now. So I'll drop the screw in here and then I'll put the shift lever right next to it. Now, if you're pulling parts off the bike that you're going to have to put back on, another good habit to get into is labeling those parts, especially if you've never pulled that stuff off before. So I'll usually put everything in like little baggies and put a piece of tape over it, and I'll write something on it like primary bolts or whatever it is. Next, we'll get down underneath to the toe shifter. The downside to not having the bike lifted, you're gonna have to get into awkward spaces, which is why I recommend if you're gonna do regular maintenance or work to your motorcycle, definitely invest in some type of lift or a way to get the bike off the ground. Even if you're young, because one day you won't be young, and that happens faster than you think. I've got the second bolt out. Now you'll notice as I pull those 2 shift levers off, there's a washer and then there's a rubber O-ring right here on this spline. Typically, when you pull something off that's sealed with a gasket or uses O-rings, you definitely want to replace the gasket, and you want to replace the O-rings for sure. I just put this O-ring on not too long ago, so what we'll do is we'll take it off, take a look at it, take a look at the washer, and if everything looks good, I'm going to slap these things back on. You'll also notice that I have this extra arm right here. Just disregard that. That actually went to the electronic shifter that I previously had installed on the bike that I no longer use. It currently does nothing for the bike, but if I ever do want to put an electric shifter back on it, I don't want to have to pull everything off and then put that thing back on. So I'm leaving it for now. It's not in my way. It doesn't inhibit me from doing anything. So for now, it's fine where it is. So next, we're putting the new shift lever on. What I'll do is I'll back this first screw out. And as I set this new one on, I want to put everything back on in the reverse order that I took everything off.
Let's see that. and an instant replay.
So if you remember, I took the heel shifter off first and then the toe shifter off second, which means I'm going to put the toe shifter back on first and then the heel shifter back on second. Now, something else I didn't mention previously was if you like the angle that everything was set up previously on the bike, you want to take note of the angle that you had the toe shifter and the heel shifter. Or if you just have a toe shifter, note the angle, because you can take the shift lever, you can put it at any angle that you want on the bike. So I'm going to put mine back roughly where I had it. I'm going to install this onto the spline just a little bit and take a look at the angle of it and see if that's where I like it. If not, I'll just pull it back off, I'll readjust it, and then I'll keep doing that until I have it roughly where I want it to be. I think that looks good, and so we'll push it all the way on. Now before I put that screw on, I'm going to put the heel shifter on, make sure that looks good too, and make sure that the way that I have that set doesn't make me want to change where I have this thing set. I think that looks about right, and so we'll put it together, and then obviously when I'm done I can take it for a test ride, and then I'll just make adjustments as needed. Now before I put these bolts in, I'm going to give them a small dab of some blue Loctite. Anytime I'm attaching something threaded to one of these bikes, I'm going to use Loctite. Now something like this with shift pegs or shift levers, where I'm probably going to pull it off and change it at some point in the future, I'll use blue Loctite because I don't want it to be permanent. If I'm working on anything engine related or transmission related, something that shouldn't come off the bike frequently, that's where you want to use the red Loctite. I'll thread this by hand first, just to make sure I don't cross thread. I'll get it hand tight, and then I'll finish it with the ratchet. Same thing for the next screw. Thread it by hand. Now something else to take note of as well, when I'm loosening and tightening these bolts, there's a lot of side-to-side pressure on this spline. And so once you get to a point where it is tight, whether you're trying to break the bolt free or tighten it back up, I will grab the shift levers just to make sure I'm not putting side-to-side pressure on that spline. And so again, it's not completely straight across. I do like my heel shifter to be slightly angled up just because it's easier for my leg to reach it. It's going to be different for every rider, and so just take your time and set everything where you want it to be. Next are the shift pegs. You can see how much longer the new shift pegs are compared to the old shift pegs. Again, I like the way these look better. They're also knurled metal, whereas these ones, I didn't realize it when I purchased them, but they are plastic. And so again, performance over aesthetic. It's a temporary fix, but I think it should get the job done for the time being. So I'll screw the new peg on. I always like to mock everything up before I Loctite everything in. And so I'll tighten it up, make sure it looks good. And if I'm happy with it, I'll back it out, give a dab of Loctite, and then tighten it up. Now again, be careful of what direction you're torquing something or tightening something down to or loosening something. You can see as I'm tightening this, it's pulling back against the shift linkage into the transmission. That's completely fine. It might shift the transmission into gear, but if the last time you parked the bike and cut everything off and you put it in neutral, don't assume that the bike is going to be in neutral when you go to pull it out and start it. That's why it's always good measure to pull the clutch anyway when you're starting your bike. I know I like where this lever sits, so instead of doing that mock-up, I'm trusting that it'll be fine, but still, once again, I will hand tighten the bolt first just to get it started, make sure I'm not cross-threading it. And then I'll come back and tighten it up. So within just a couple of minutes, we changed out both of the shift levers. We went from chrome to black, and then we changed out some longer pegs in place of the short pegs. You can see how much longer the new pegs are compared to the old pegs if I lay this one on top. It's about 1.5 inches longer. Now on the heel, it's not a big deal for me, but on the toe, this is where I was having the shifting issues. That extra 1.5 inches is gonna make a big difference. Everything in the world would be better if it was 1.5 inches bigger, right? Now I know what you've probably been thinking this entire time, which is, BattleBot, why the hell is your bike so dirty and beat the hell up? I haven't washed it in quite some time, and that's just kind of the look of this thing. It's my rat boy or my muscle boy, so stop judging so hard. That's what it's supposed to look like. But there you have it. New shift levers, new shift pegs, performance over everything else, and last but not least, we have to give it a test run. So my initial impressions are, this is a much better setup. It's extremely windy out today, so I'm trying not to ride too fast. That way the wind doesn't distort my voice. But the initial impressions are the extra 1.5 inches on that toe shifter is going to make a huge difference for me. You can see when I put my toe up here, now I have a whole bunch of space between my knee and the tank. my prosthetic scuffs up and kind of destroys the paint over here on the bike, which obviously I'm not too worried about the paint right now. But the big thing is it's not slipping off. As I'm sitting here hovering my leg and my foot above the peg, which is great. Now I will say, ironically, I mentioned during the install that I was confident that the heel shifter was where I like it to be. But as I'm sitting here riding it, I do think it's a little bit higher than where I initially had it set. And so I'm going to have to pay attention to that. I'm not going to go back to the shop and immediately change it back to where it was. Because who knows, maybe this is going to wind up being a better spot. So I'll give it a couple of miles and see if I like where it is. Or if I need to go back and adjust it. But the toe shifter is right where I want it to be. If you haven't checked out my video on how I shift this bike, I'll include that link in the description below. Again, I'm not sure if it's a permanent solution for what I have going on, but I get to ride on my two wheels, so I'm not complaining about it. If you stick around long enough on the channel, we do have some other big time projects coming up. We have a shovel head chopper build for this hardtail Paco frame. We've got a big wheel that needs a big bore kit. Here's the shovel head completely stripped apart right now. You can check out the shovel head announcement video in the link above. So that's a long-term project that I'm working on. And then something happening fairly soon is I just got the cam and we've got all the goodies to replace the cam in that fat boy. I'll be doing a how-to video on the installation of the entire cam chest here. So we have a cam, we have the gaskets, we have a couple of different jets because we're gonna have to rejet the carburetor. Always grab a new needle bearing. We have some S&S quickie push rods. And this is honestly what I'm most curious about for that video. I bought a cam bearing puller and installation tool, and there's a couple of different ones out there, but we'll be using this one for my installation. And if any of you guys are out there looking to do your own cam work in your shop, I'll give this thing a review. That way you guys can know if you want to spend the money to purchase this thing or bring it to someone else's shop and have them do it. If you made it this far into the video, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you're not already subscribed, subscribe to the channel. That way you can get logged into the BattleBot Moto community. And if you've watched any of my previous videos, I will be getting some stickers printed up by everyone's requests. And again, the first round of these stickers are going to be free. So stay tuned for an announcement on when that's going to be and how to get one of these stickers. But that's all I've got for you today. You guys ride safe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Until next time, peace.